We just saw one of the best races in recent history during the Chicago Marathon. We had multiple athletes chasing world record times, dramatic fall-offs near the end, and the establishment of a new force in the marathon scene. Now, there were three main athletes that most people had their eyes on. First, of course, was John Korir, brother of two-time Boston Marathon winner Wesley Korir and a former training partner of the late great Kelvin Kiptum. Korir was coming off his own win in Boston, which notably featured a brutal kick after 20 miles, including a 4:41-mile up Heartbreak Hill. He had declared that he would be going for Kiptum's world record of 2 hours and 35 seconds during this race. Challenging him though would be Uganda's Jacob Kiplimo, who until recently was primarily a track and half marathon runner. In my opinion, he is one of the most underrated athletes on the scene today. He holds the half marathon record at a ridiculous 56 minutes and 42 seconds and boasts serious 5k and 10k times of 12 minutes 40 and 26:33 respectively. He even has a 7:26 3k personal best, showing great signs of genuine speed. This might be the best range of all time as an athlete, maybe even above the likes of Yomif Kejelcha. Kiplimo made his debut in the longer distance at last year's London Marathon, in which he came second with a 2 hours, 3 minutes and 37 second time. He was only beaten by Kenya's Sebastian Sawe, who ran the second fastest time the course has ever seen to take the win. Kiplimo stated after the race he was uncertain about whether he would transition to the marathon fully. Prior to the London build-up, he had stuck to very low mileage for a marathon runner, barely getting above 80-mile weeks. This is normal for a 10k and a half marathon guy, but nowhere near enough for the full 42 kilometers. Most elite marathoners are doing 100 miles plus each week, with many getting up to 120. Kelvin Kiptum said he was doing almost 190 miles a week before his world record. The same low mileage approach is actually true for Korir, who was similarly only running 80 miles a week until recently, something that would expose him later on in the race. With this in mind, both athletes theoretically have loads of potential to improve, and since they already have super fast personal best, the world record was in genuine jeopardy. Many people also had American runner Conor Mantz on their watch list, after he announced he would be aiming to break the American record set by Khalid Khannouchi 23 years ago. This was a former world record set in the London Marathon of 2 hours, 5 minutes and 38 seconds, and since then, no USA athlete has seriously challenged it. The US has been starved of strong marathon running talent for many years now. The only big name in their marathon running scene recently was Galen Rupp, who was an Olympic 10,000 meter silver medalist next to Mo Farah in the 2012 Olympic Games, but Rupp's personal best in the 42k was a 2:06, and his age, coupled with injury setbacks, never made him seriously challenge the time. He was actually running today as well, but this felt more like a farewell race rather than something he was actually competing in seriously. The real drama of this race was simple. Can Conor Mantz break the national record, and can John Korir or Jacob Kiplimo break the world record? The race started with the lead pack breaking away in a blistering 4:25 first mile, which was equivalent to 1:55 pace, and they followed this first mile with a 13:58 first 5k and a 28:25 first 10k, which was on course for sub 2 hours. The conditions were suitable for a world record as well, a light breeze along with 13 degrees Celsius weather, and the racers were taking full advantage. As crazy as these splits were, however, there was a slight tailwind in the first 10 kilometers of the race, so people were expecting the pace to slow down a little bit. Conor Mantz settled into the main chase pack, who went through 10k at 29 minutes 17 seconds, or 2 hours 3 minutes and 30 second pace. This was a group of 11 runners and featured the likes of former half marathon world record holder Geoffrey Kamworora. In the front pack, the leaders continued to press the pace, with Korir and Kiplimo looking super comfortable. Around the 1 hour mark, John Korir broke away from the field and began grinding out even faster splits. Kiplimo followed him, but not super close. It appeared the Ugandan was trying to measure how real of a breakaway this was. Surging away from the pack only halfway through the race would be a super premature move. As the saying goes, the halfway point of the marathon is 30 kilometers, because that's when your body really starts to hurt. So runners normally wait until that point to make the move, as then they can be sure they are actually in good shape, rather than just running off pure excitement and freshness. For instance, Korir won Boston after a super fast final 12k, as indeed did Kelvin Kiptum for pretty much all of his races. So the question was this just Korir testing the waters a little bit, or was he about to drop one of the greatest men's marathon performances of all time? At the hour and 15 minute mark, Mantz was still running at 2 hours and 4 minute pace. He had slowed down after the initial rush at the start of the race and the slight tailwind in the first 10k, but was still on course for that national record. So now it was about settling into the pace and conserving as much energy as possible. Meanwhile, Korir and Kiplimo had broken away decisively from the lead pack and were working together, running side by side. It was clear that this was a two-horse race, and whilst it was a little early to say, the world record seemed set to go. That said, they still had yet to reach the most brutal part of the marathon. After 80 minutes of running, we saw another breakaway. Kiplimo, not Korir, dropped a decisive move and began pushing towards the finish. In fact, he developed a sizable lead after barely a minute of accelerating. Now, Kiplimo had surged before 18 miles, but Korir had covered the move. I'd be able to show you footage of this if the broadcast had actually shown it, but I suppose such a thing is too much to ask for a viewer. With this surge, however, it seemed the Kenyan was unable to respond and was beginning to fade quite badly. At the 90-minute mark, Kiplimo's projected time was 2 hours and 13 seconds. It was him against the clock. He had 21 seconds to spare if he wanted to beat the world record, but had to wind up the pace slightly if he wanted to get that hallowed sub 2 hour mark. By this point, second place had actually switched. Amos Kipruto was just under a minute behind Kiplimo, having overtaken Korir, who was now in big trouble. But alas, despite having a massive lead over the competition, in the last 5k, the Ugandan was beginning to slow. His last 3 miles had been just under 5-minute pace, when you would be hoping for a closer to 4:30 to 4:40 miles. This had meant his projected time had unfortunately shot up to a 2:01 pace. Of course, this is the fatigue likely starting to catch up with him after several aggressive surges and a brutal first half of the marathon. And as we would soon find out, this was beginning to really take its toll on him. Still, Kipruto was a full 90 seconds behind the Ugandan, so it seemed Kiplimo's victory was in the bag. Indeed, the Ugandan finished running the 7th fastest time in history of 2 hours, 2 minutes and 23 seconds. That's a minute shaved off his personal best, and you would hope he can repeat that in the years to come. Conor Mantz was finishing super strong as well, with near dead even splits in a race where most runners bonked in the second half. Mantz managed to climb from 9th place at the halfway mark to finish just outside the podium in 4th. In doing so, he smashed the American record to run 2 hours, 4 minutes and 42 seconds. And Khalid Unuchi was there to congratulate him on the finish line. Very efficient and calculated running by Mantz. I think he probably ran the best race of the entire field. Of course, he was not the fastest on that day, but I feel like he got the most out of what his body was capable of, whereas many of the others started off a little hot and suffered the consequences at the infamous 30k mark. Now of course, we all would have liked to see the world record fall and see that famous sub 2 hour barrier broken. And if we're being honest, Kiplimo was not super close to either of these times. He slowed down significantly in the final 10k, and you could even see by his form that he was super fatigued. Around the halfway point, he looked super smooth and elegant, but by the end, his knee drive had completely gone. His last mile as well was a 5:05, and he was on the ground immediately after the run. This does seem pretty expected given he is a half marathon specialist. He has the natural speed to start off strong and surge aggressively, but does not maybe have the same conditioning a natural marathoner would at the end of the race. Of course, he has upped his training mileage recently, but the accumulated conditioning required for the marathon takes a few years to really build up. The same applies to John Korir, who faded harder and earlier than Kiplimo and happens to have the same mileage background as the Ugandan. This situation reminds me a bit of Zernase Tedesse, who was an Eritrean runner and former half marathon world record holder. Despite his acumen in the half, his PB in the full remained a comparatively mediocre 2 hours, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The reason being that his body was not conditioned to run the longer mileage, and he was notoriously bad at fueling effectively for that longer distance. He could get away with poor nutrition in the half marathon, but that takes a serious toll in the full one. Luckily, Kiplimo does not seem to be going that route, but he still has similar conditioning issues to address in order to be in world record shape. I said this way back in April when he debuted in the London Marathon, but of today's athletes, Kiplimo is my personal pick to run sub 2 hours in the marathon. He is relatively young by the event standards, and with an extra 2 to 3 years of 100-mile weeks, will have the aerobic strength to hold that pace for longer. Once he gets more experience competing at that event as well, I'm sure that will help him understand where his body is at mid-race and allow him to pace things more optimally. I saw some debate online about how Sebastian Sawe would have done in this race, and I'm kind of conflicted. Sawe recently won the Berlin Marathon with a new personal best of 2 hours, 2 minutes and 16 seconds, and this was 5 minutes faster than second place because of the brutal 25-degree heat during the race. Despite that, he still managed a faster time than Kiplimo with similarly aggressive splits, opening his first 10k in sub 2 hour pace and his half split being bang on world record time. In terms of raw performance, I would slightly lean towards Sawe today, but I feel like Kiplimo has got a bit more long-term potential in the distance. Either way, I really look forward to seeing both of them compete against each other whenever they next meet. But on another note, the broadcasting coverage for this marathon was ass. I mean, these commentators were witnessing a serious, legitimate world record attempt that also had genuine sub 2 hour potential, arguably the most legendary barrier that still exists in the sport today, and yet they were constantly cutting away to the wheelchair race, missed several big moves by Kiplimo, were rarely telling us about the splits, and in the last 20 minutes of the race, they cut away to some corporate bigwig from Abbott to do a marketing interview. Like, come on man, no one cares. I understand that Abbott is a major sponsor of the marathon majors, it's in the name, but surely they could have done this after the first 10k or something, not right at the end of the damn race. They only showed Kiplimo running in the last 2 minutes of this as well. So in a way, I am cynically glad that such a historic mark was not done with such poor broadcasting. But if you want to hear more about this world record and the tragic story of Kelvin Kiptum, then click on this video here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.